They said the house is hers now, the lawyer had told me. Calm, unfeeling, like he was announcing the weather. And just like that, 36 years of memories of sweat-soaked summers, fixing broken steps of winters, spent patching drafty windows of dinners, made in Mama's cast-iron skillet, were no longer mine. They handed her the keys, told me to clear out by Friday, so I did. I didn't yell, I didn't beg, I didn't even call my sister. I just packed my boxes, loaded what I could into my truck, and walked out of the only home I'd ever known. She stood on the porch as I left, sipping iced tea like it was just another sunny day. She didn't wave, but I smiled. Because if they thought I was walking away with nothing, they didn't know me. 3 weeks later, I rolled back into the neighborhood. Not into her driveway, not onto her property, but onto the empty lot next door. I stepped out of my truck in work boots, sunglasses, and a ball cap. Tied around my waist was the same flannel Mama used to wear when she gardened. I had bought the lot, quietly auctioned off after years of back taxes. No one had wanted it. Too much overgrowth, too much hassle. But I wanted it, not out of spite, out of principle. The kind of principle that says if you can't live in the house you built, you find a way to still be seen. And I made sure she saw me. First came the trailer, a modest one-bedroom camper. Then came the generator, the tool shed, and finally the noise. The bulldozer. I hired a crew, local boys, good people. And every morning like clockwork they showed up. Beep, 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 crunch. Every root, every rock, every piece of rusted metal left behind in the lot, I had it turned over. The land was loud, messy, alive. And she hated it. The first morning, she stomped down her porch steps in her white robe and slippers, like a queen whose garden had been invaded. "What are you doing?" she snapped. I wiped sweat from my brow. "Clearing my land. You can't just build here." I smiled. That's funny. Neither could Mama, and yet, here we are. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, spun around, and walked away. By that afternoon, I'd placed a folding chair at the edge of my lot, facing her house. Every time I sat there, I wasn't looking at her. I was looking through her, because she hadn't just taken the house. She'd taken the stories, Mama's photos, the recipe box, the quilt sewn from our childhood clothes. She claimed it all legally, maybe, but morally, that belonged to both of us. And now she'd have to live with the reminder, not just of me, but of what she did. Because you can change the locks, you can switch the name on the deed, but you can't silence the sound of a bulldozer at 7 a.m., clearing the earth, like someone rebuilding a life. I lived in that house longer than anyone else ever had. After Mama passed, I stayed behind. Not because I was stuck, but because it was home. I paid the property taxes. I mowed the lawn every Saturday. I knew which cabinet creaked and which pipes rattled when the heater kicked in. I kept her garden alive, even the stubborn roses she never could quite tame. My younger sister Dana, she left right after college. Big job, big city, big promises to come back and help when I can. She came back all right after Mama's health turned and the estate came into play. Suddenly, she was at every doctor's visit, holding Mama's hand for 15 minutes before racing off to handle the paperwork. She called herself the responsible one, said I was too sentimental to manage something this important. I didn't argue, because I was busy caring for Mama, brushing her hair when it thinned, helping her eat when her hands trembled. I was the one who listened to her cry when the medicine failed, the one who sat at the foot of the bed until her last breath. After the funeral, Dana stayed a few extra days to handle logistics. I should have known. A week later, a letter arrived from her lawyer. Calm, clinical. Per the revised will effective 3 weeks before your mother's passing, Dana Blake is now the sole beneficiary of the estate, including the house at 112 Magnolia Lane. I read it 3 times before it sank in. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even call Dana. I just stood there in the hallway next to Mama's sewing machine and let the air turn to stone around me. She had changed the will, or maybe convinced Mama to. I'll never know. What I did know was this: I was no longer welcome in the home I had kept alive. The same home where I'd bandaged scraped knees, canned peaches, buried 2 dogs in the backyard. The same home where I watched our mother die. I had 30 days to vacate. No thank you. No conversation. Just a signature on a page and a set of instructions to remove myself from my own history. So I packed. I folded her quilts carefully, left the best ones on the guest bed, because they were technically not mine. I boxed up photos that had my face in them, and left behind the ones she was smiling in. And when Dana showed up on the final day in heels too high for our old porch steps, she looked around and said, "You handled this better than I expected." I said nothing, because silence sometimes carries more weight than any reply. And I wasn't done speaking. I just wasn't using words anymore. The lot next door had been empty for years. Just wild grass, broken fence posts, and the bones of an old shed leaning like it was too tired to stand. Most folks in the neighborhood figured it was useless, too small to sell, too overgrown to build on, too forgotten to matter. But I noticed it. I always had. Mama used to talk about planting fruit trees on that lot. Said it would be her little orchard someday. She never got around to it. After Dana took the house, I drove past the lot one evening. The moon was low and the street was quiet. I pulled over and sat there for 20 minutes, just looking, thinking, breathing. Then I made a call. The county had listed the land for back taxes. No one had paid in years. It was up for public auction. I placed a bid. 1 week later it was mine. I didn't tell a soul. While Dana was posting Instagram photos from the living room I once decorated, I was at the supply store pricing out gravel and portable generators. She had taken the home. I had taken the ground beside it. 3 weeks later, I rolled up in my truck, parked on my land, hooked up a small camper I'd borrowed from a friend. Nothing fancy. One bed, a tiny sink, a propane burner. Just enough. The morning after I moved in, I made coffee and stepped outside. The sun rose slow behind the houses. Birds rustled through the pines. And there she was, standing at her window, her hand frozen on the curtain. She didn't wave. Neither did I. By the afternoon, I had a crew scheduled. Local boys, ones who remembered Mama, ones who remembered me. They showed up with gloves, saws, shovels, and one big yellow machine that stole the entire neighborhood's attention, the bulldozer. It wasn't for destruction, it was for declaration. We cleared brush, hauled rotted wood, tore up roots thick as arms. The ground was loud, the machines were louder, and Dana. She came storming out on day 2 in her pristine sweater and perfect lipstick, like the noise was a personal insult. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "Building," I said simply. Building what a reminder. She stared at me like I was crazy. Maybe I was. But I was also there, present, visible, unshakable. I didn't yell, I didn't curse. I just smiled every time the backhoe roared, every time the hammer hit nail, every time she stepped outside and realized her view now included me. Because the house may have been hers. But the story, the land, the past, that was still ours. And I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't just clear land, I cleared history. Each swing of the backhoe wasn't just about reclaiming space, it was about reclaiming voice. Every root unearthed, every slab pulled up, every rusty nail tossed aside. I was peeling back what had been buried, ignored, rewritten. Dana thought I was just being dramatic, that I was bitter, petty. But what I was building wasn't revenge. It was presence. And it was working. By the second week, her tone changed. She stopped coming outside, stopped glaring from the window. Instead, she started whispering with neighbors, trying to explain me away. "She's always been fragile," I overheard her say once. But fragile women don't operate bulldozers. They don't hang custom signs. Because yes, I put up a sign. 12 feet wide. Hand-painted white letters against a forest green background facing directly toward her kitchen window. It read, "This land was watered by the same woman who raised us both. Some things can't be divided." The day it went up, she left the blinds closed. For the first time, she became the invisible one. And the town noticed. Because in small towns, noise travels. But silence echoes. Soon people began to ask questions. At the grocery store, at the post office. "What's going on between you and your sister?" I never answered directly. just smiled and said, "Family stuff." But then something happened that even I hadn't planned. A man showed up at my lot, button-up shirt, clipboard in hand. "City inspection," he said. "On what shared fence line complaint? Looks like her property crosses into yours by about 3 feet." My eyebrows lifted. "Really?" He nodded. "Her pool deck, to be specific. Built a little too far out. It overlaps the property boundary." I thanked him. And I didn't file a lawsuit. Didn't demand it be torn down. I just posted a photo on Facebook. A clean aerial shot, red lines drawn clearly. Caption, "Not everything inherited is rightfully earned." The post spread like fire through dry brush. Old high school classmates commented. People Mama used to bake for shared it with crying face emojis and long "I knew something was wrong" messages. Dana called me the next day. She didn't yell this time. She pleaded. "You've made your point." I said nothing. People are talking. Still nothing. I could sell the house, you know. And there it was. The truth in her voice. She didn't want it anymore. Because it didn't shine like it used to. Not with all the noise next door. Not with the conversations in town. Not with the pool deck leaning into contested soil. But I wasn't interested in the house. Not anymore. She could keep the walls, the roof, the title. Because what I had now was far more powerful. I had presence. I had people. I had a sign that couldn't be ignored. And a story that couldn't be rewritten. Dana never took the sign down. She tried, of course. Complained to the city about visual pollution, about property value, impact, about my bulldozer being aggressively symbolic. The inspector shrugged. "It's her land," he said. So the sign stayed. Every morning, she opened her blinds and faced it. Every evening, she closed them again a little earlier. She started parking her car on the other side of the house. Then she stopped tending the flower beds Mama used to love. One day, I watched her through the hedge as she pulled down the old lace curtains in the front window and replaced them with heavy beige drapes. She was trying to shut the story out, but it was too late, because the house had become a shell with her name on it, but no warmth left inside. She could own the title, but not the meaning. Meanwhile, I kept building, not a house, a space, a small garden like Mama always wanted, a fire pit with chairs where neighbors came by to share lemonade and stories. We talked about the past, laughed about old times, planted tomatoes, swapped peach cobbler recipes. No drama, no revenge, just roots growing deeper into soil that no longer felt like a battlefield. Then one morning, a for sale sign went up in Dana's yard. I wasn't surprised. The listing didn't last long. People weren't eager to buy a house with a story attached to it, and in this town, stories don't come with expiration dates. Eventually, a couple from out of state made an offer. She moved out at dawn one Saturday. No goodbye, no final word. But I waved from my chair anyway. Because the thing about truth is it doesn't need to shout, it just stays. And I stayed. I stayed when it was hard, when it was humiliating, when I felt invisible. And in the end, that quiet refusal to disappear was what made all the difference. People still ask me about it. "Why didn't you fight for the house?" I just smile. Because I know something Dana never understood. A home isn't a deed, it's a legacy. And sometimes the only way to protect it is to never leave it. Not physically, not emotionally, not in memory. Now, when kids bike past my lot and wave, I wave back. When people point to the garden and say, "That's where the strong one lives," I nod. Because in the end, she got the house. But I got the last word. And I wrote it one garden bed, one sunrise, one unshakable truth at a time. Has someone ever taken something you built, thinking you'd just walk away quietly? Did you ever choose to stay, not for revenge, but for meaning, for memory, for strength? Share your story in the comments. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be erased.